After going through the overview of global incidents with regard to policing, especially in USA and other countries, and various agitations with regard to defunding the policing and other racial activities and anti-racial movements worldwide going, that gives me a perspective to understand what is basically wrong with the police or what is basically wrong with the perception of police. I would like to take you back in 91, maybe 92, when I was as a civil services candidate was to be interviewed by UPSC. During my interview, Mr. Bed Marwa, ex-commissioner of police, was a member. Unfortunately, he died recently, and I must pay my tribute to him. While I was being interviewed as an expert member, he posed one very, very smart question and very relevant question. I didn't know that I will end up in a police service, but the question he put up still still holds good in my mind. The question was that, Mr. Tiwari, corruption is everywhere. Why does it matter in police more? Why the corruption in the police is taken more seriously by the society than other organizations? This was his question. And I still remember the very smart reply I gave to him. I still doubt at that age of around 24, 25, how could I immediately impromptu reply that question? And that reply is still, very, very relevant, very, very contemporary, and very, very important in my mind. My reply to him was that perhaps that could have been one of the decisions that I was given very liberally in my interview marks. Uh, I said, sir, police is not corrupt. Certain policemen are corrupt. So I took the question in two parts. Sir, police is not corrupt. Certain police men are corrupt. Men includes all. Second thing I said, sir, corruption in police is taken very seriously by society and all stakeholders because if we see the evolution of our democratic society, there have been revolutions in the world and they were for right to life, liberty and property. This right to life, liberty and property, these are very, very basic rights of human society and human existence. Fortunately, these three rights are very well protected by the police, and that is why people are very, very apprehensive. A corrupt police will not be able to protect these rights properly, and then these rights being violated because of police being corrupt will be perceived as a major threat to civil liberties. That was my answer. So, this is historical perspective I just wanted to quote. But I again come back to the basic question that defund police or globally anti-racist movement going there. So, the entire issue can be discussed in various parts. So, part first, racialism. No civil society, no civilized society can support racialism. It's unscientific, prejudiced, and selfish perception. So, racialism per se is abhorrent, unacceptable, unpracticable in any society, whether it happens in Europe, America, India, South Africa, everywhere. And our great grandfather, Mr. Mahatma Gandhi, Sri Mahatma Gandhi ji, was a great champion of anti racialism or apartheid. So, racialism per se cannot be supported. Now, still, this evil is existing in our society globally. The difference of color is still a very, very significant subconscious instinct in our minds where you can find that a choice for fairer color is an obvious decision. And if you go to the uneducated people in villages, being little bit dark color is considered to be less fortunate than being a fairer color. Because if you see the matrimonial attachments, you see girl, fair color, this, that. So human society is basically prejudiced, and unfortunately our education and learning system do not inculcate a kind of scientific interpretation of color. Fair color, dark color, white color, all these are the actually learning prejudices. Nothing else. Because these are acquired kind of prejudices which we try to learn being groomed up as a member of society. So I think racialism or the option for the fair color is actually firstly a cultural identity, because a group belonging to these color used to think that they are members of that group, ethnic group, racial group, whatsoever. So the people with different color and different kind of facial designs were considered to be an outsider. So this cultural identity has actually converted into a racial identity. And then racial identity becoming a kind of a discriminatory practice. Means I am superior, you are not. A person with fairer color is considering himself to be superior by black man. This is absolutely absurd scientific concept. No genomic study, no genetic study, nobody can say that a black color is having any inferior human quality than a white. So this is a learned prejudice, and the learning is actually people having a kind of social exclusion from mixing. And it is this actual biases historically propagated during imperialism or white man's burden theory, etc., at the time of colonial times, are still continuing in our minds residually. If you see, the comparison happens in every society. People with a little bit fairer color are given more importance. People with a little bit unfairer colors are considered to be less beautiful. This is a totally unacceptable proposition of society. Now coming to racialism, racial violence in America. We have to see three things together. First thing is there is the general distress and stress in society. America, Europe, India, everywhere. Because of the COVID-19 deaths, because of the loss of jobs, because of uncertainty of future, and because of the loss of jobs, this, that, business, etc., etc. So there is a sizable stress and uncertainty in the minds of the people of all societies. When there is stress, then there are triggers which worsen the situation. These triggers actually are happening many times, even in the past. It is not that because of the in contemporary society, racialism has increased in America and Europe. What happens? The stress of different situations actually cocktail with the stress, and then a frustration, and then it gets some oxygenation from external factors. Maybe certain countries are trying to take the opportunity of COVID crisis to become a global superpower. So it is a mix of all these things: frustration in society, loss of jobs, existing prejudices in society historically, all these factors being triggered by one isolated incident where George Floyd was killed by a white person, white police officer, and the famous cry, I cannot breathe, etc. etc. I am a police officer. Yes, of course. I cannot defend violence, fatal violence by the police. We have to justify. We are accountable to society and to the administration for the use of force. We cannot take lives simply because I think so. A police in a democratic society is accountable to the law, accountable to the due process of law, accountable to the social, cultural, ethical moralities, and cannot behave in very autocratic way to take lives. So what happens to the police? Police has two extremes. There is a violence going on, be a silent spectator. Then you are labeled as an ineffective police. Another extreme is that there is something going on. Some police officer acts overly and jumps into the fray and takes the lives. What is the balanced way of understanding these things? Unfortunately, police in uniform is entitled to use the force. But having the entitlement of force doesn't give you a license to use the force disproportionately, disproportionately and unfairly. The personal mental framework of a particular police officer to judge a particular situation and use the amount of the force on a particular person or persons is the root cause of the problem. When we are using the force, we have to be sure that the person against whom we are using the force is how much dangerous to the society immediately. And there are certain objective interpretations. Suppose a terrorist is holding a gun and trying to fire a crowd of people, and if a police officer is standing there with a gun, he has all right to kill that person or make him ineffective whatsoever. But then that violence is going to be less opposed by the people and it will be called professional use of the force. But if somebody is already overpowered, killing him again and again by choking his throat or anything is something which I do not think a proper way of using the force. So I always believe that yes, police should be teethful. It should not be teethless because it is to ensure law and order. But the use of the force needs to be well structured. Unfortunately, policing is a such subject which has been ignored in terms of researches, in terms of developing new practices, and in terms of so many things. So policing has been left to police personnel on the ground. Very little control of seniors when the people on the ground use the force, and then situation takes its own course. So my discussion is here how to make responsible, restrained, and restrictive use of force. Unfortunately, on the ground, situation is sometimes out of control because of arsoning, loot, violence, etc. etc. Sometimes a police is also surrounded by a violent mob. So there are two situations. One thing is that can the police be a silent spectator of loot, arson, etc., etc., or common man, woman, men, women being killed by the arsonists, looters, etc. If we take the first situation where the hooligans, vandals are burning public property, doing violence, looting stores, whether the police should be a silent spectator or what should do? If do, why, how much, how? I have certain reservations with regard to use of the force. In the thick of situations, it's very difficult to behave like a rule book. But yes, at the macro level, we can. I always say there are technological instruments available, should be made available to the police, which should be used. If a mob is, or a few people are doing violence on the street, killing, looting, or damaging the public property, how should they be restricted? First thing is that there are rubber bullets. That, in fact, I say that the weaponry to the police should be given lethal weapon only for the self-defense. When somebody is pointing a gun on me, only then I should be allowed to fire. Otherwise, in all circumstances, mostly the police can stop the violence by using rubber bullets or other anti-riot equipments. So these anti-riot and anti-arson equipment, whatever you can call, now need to be better organized and made user-friendly even for small incidents. For example, if some crowd is doing that, how to make that crowd ineffective? So use of tear gas, use of rubber bullets, use of other pepper sprays, etc. I think non-lethal things should be given, should be made available, and that should be the first line of action. And I am fully convinced that with these things you can control things. But unfortunately, a police officer is given a gun, a few of them is given some instruments. So if he is not able to save the lives of the people, he is called inefficient, and then his own mental framework triggers him to use the gun or resort to any other lethal activities. So I fully believe that each and every police officer is not so much emotionally strong, and he can hold the emotional triggers of anger, etc., or emotional triggers of personal prejudices, etc., and that actually these triggers push him to adopt certain postures, certain measures which are taking him out of the boundaries of the police professionalism. So here I would like to tell that the the use of force needs to be defined, restricted, and it should be technology based with lesser lethalities and more effectiveness. And here the resources of the police needs to be upgraded, because we give weapon. And why we are giving weapon? We are we identify police with the military. We give weapon. Why not there should be a proper research and development to give police less lethal weapons, so that even if police is forced to use that, lethalities are restricted. It's more a kind of using the force to limit the damage, not to kill the people. So here I would like to say that those who are talking defund the police, this, that, they are not actually talking the cultures of a civil society. Because either police or anarchy. If you don't have a police, there is going to be anarchy. So police is not a choice. It is a mandate of a civil society. Police is required not for killing the people. It is to protect our human rights. So that when there are social restrictions, when there are individual to individual restrictions, then police can come and rescue us. And what rescues? Our lives, our properties, our liberties. So police, defunding the police is not the answer. Actually, funding the police is the answer. And funding them in terms of technology, in terms of soft training, in terms of emotional training, emotional profiling. Let the policemen should be, because they are also the members of the society. Certain cognitive biases society has is actually transferred to the policemen also. So the real attack should be on these cognitive biases. Racial biases, prejudices should be taken at the level of schools. There should not be any exclusive school. There is a proper mixing of the people. All kind of, we have to actively see the way the society, the kid is born and then brought up, and then the schooling is done, the peer group, everywhere there is a need to inculcate a kind of emotional intelligence to accept each other, irrespective of caste, creed, color. So this is I think that schools are the biggest game changers with regard to racialism, because the kids learn racial biases, caste and creed biases from their early childhood, and then later on that these biases get strengthened in their other domains of the life. So what I would like to say, that now police reforms, yes, of course, reforms should be everywhere. Why not? Police also needs a lot of reforms in terms of its training modules, in terms of its personality traits, in terms of profiling the police people, in terms of educating or systematically inculcating in them the virtues of emotional intelligence, virtues of civil society, virtues of human rights. And of course, on the professional front, they should not be given a kind of system, an ecosystem where they are not being resourced to cope with the situation. So it should be a duty of each and every police group to ensure that his or her group member does not exceed the boundaries of force, entitled force. Choking the throat of that black person, I find no reason in that. That white police officer was totally not becoming of a police officer. He was becoming very much personal. And this is a personal violence. This is not a police violence. If you have brought any person on the ground and he is unarmed, what the point choking his throat? And when he's saying that I cannot breathe, it means your anger is dominating your professionalism. And believe me, professionalism doesn't mean anger. A professional police should be kind, fine, but it cannot behave in angry way. He was not having a gun pointing on him, like in other case where a person snatched the gun of a police officer, tried to aim at that. That's totally a different case. I always say that if somebody is pointing a gun, loaded gun on me, then I have all right, even a public has all right to fire on him. Yes, that is a subject matter of understanding whether the fire should be on the lower or upper portion of the body. But you are killing me, so I have first right to kill you. That's totally a different proposition altogether. But here, the killing of George Floyd cannot be justified from any professionalism. Having said that, I fully accept the logic that police exceeded the boundaries, professional boundaries, and no wise police officer, professionally competent police officer will ever support this kind of racialism and this kind of police use of force and fatal use of force. So, but I have to look into aftermath. Now the anger of police has been manifested in killing that person. Now the anger of society comes. Can one anger be justified on the basis of another bad anger? Let me tell you, anger is a bad, whether society or individual. One violence cannot be justified by another violence. People who are doing looting, arsoning, and all kind of violent activities they are doing on streets cannot take the name that Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter always, everywhere, should matter. Why not? But that doesn't mean that it gives you a license to be arsonist, to be looters, to be doing violence on the streets. How you derive this kind of right? This is not the way to air your grievances. This is a totally unacceptable public violence. You cannot take law into your hands because somebody has violated the law. Where do you get the law? The rule of law is for public and for police as well. You cannot be mob cannot be judge, jury, and everything, and a police together. So what I say is that this thesis, antithesis, all these things are very, very unfortunate. When we are having the worst pandemic, thousands and thousands of people are losing lives because of COVID-19. At that time, looting, arsoning on the streets in the name of police violence doesn't serve the cause. And then the kind of interpretations people are making it. Somebody is saying it's supported by a foreign country, by a particular ideology to disintegrate America, to disintegrate the world because it is wanting to be a superpower, this, that. Then somebody is saying this is by another political party to malign the image of the ruling party.